Thank you, Anjan, for that wonderful, wonderful introduction. It's actually an absolute honor for me to be standing here on behalf of all the exceptional volunteers that OSAAT has got. So please give a big hand. That is truly what makes this organization click. The volunteers, both in India and in the US, are so committed because everybody believes in the cause. And when people believe in the cause, right, they just forget what they need to do from their personal point of view. Instead, they allocate their time, money, resources, everything. The whole family, in fact, in many cases, you will see the entire family backing up and supporting the OSAAT organization for the last so many years. So I just want to ask a question in the audience. How many of you have heard of OSAAT before you came here? Can you please raise your hand? Okay, so that's like a 25-30%. Okay, that's kind of like what I expected. And OSAAT is in this business for the last so many years. And in Silicon Valley, we have this mode of operandi for startup companies called the stealth mode. So when a startup company is funded, when a startup company gets into motion, companies actually are doing a lot of things. They have built the product, they have hired people, they've get venture capitalist funding, they even ship the products. But they never talk about it. They're very, very secretive. And so this is called the stealth mode, being in the stealth mode. So at OSAAT, we sort of believe in that model. I mean, we are not very secretive like in a Silicon Valley technology company, where it makes sense to be secretive. We are open about what we are doing. We have a website. But at the end of the day, I would say there are more people, students, who have already benefited from this program than the number of people who know in the outside world what OSAAT is. So the whole philosophy of the organization is let's do the work first, and then let's talk. And that's why I'm honored to be representing this extraordinary set of volunteers to tell the story of OSAAT, of what we have done, why we are here. Why are we doing what we are doing? So I thought I'll just share with you with a few slides, and then what we'll do, we'll follow that up with a small video, and then follow that up with 2 panel discussions. So we have one set of panel where we have many donors who are sitting here who have contributed to OSAAT. And on the other side, we have partners and we have many schools that have benefited from OSAAT who are here. And let's hear directly from them, both from the donor perspective and from the recipient perspective as to what they think about OSAAT and how we can scale this organization and how a phenomena like this can be multiplied and make a bigger impact, not just in India, perhaps maybe outside of India as well, because we have seen even in the US, similar problems exist. And a lot of people have asked us, why do this only in India? Why not do it in the US? So we are actually seriously looking at evaluating schools in America as well. So with that, let me ask this question. How many of you believe that education is the most important aspect of our lives that has made a change in whatever we were to whatever we are today? Can you raise your hand? Pretty much everybody, right? I mean, there is no question about it. But what we also believe that this helps to uplift people from illiteracy, poverty, and child labor. I mean, especially in rural parts of the country, if children don't go to school, they end up being pulled into child labor. Once they get into that cycle, it's almost impossible for them to come out of that loop, right? That is the biggest challenge that our country is facing. I mean, I come from a small village, Bagalur, which is about 35 kilometers from here. And when I grew up, we only had primary and middle school up to 7th standard. We didn't even have high school. So my brother and myself and my younger brothers pretty much went to this government school up to the 7th standard. And I would say, because we were very fortunate that our parents emphasized on education to be the top priority, we kind of stood out compared to the rest of the village. Honestly, the entire village was sailing in the same boat. Entire village was sailing in the same boat. There was no difference because all of us wait for the same rainfall. Everybody's economy is all driven by the same crops that we grow or the milk that we get and how we sell. And that's how the economy for the village was. And it all depends on the rain guard. If the rain guard doesn't show up, there's no crop. There is no crop, there is no income. But with all the difficulties, because our parents had the educational background, because my father was a teacher, my grandfather was a teacher, hook or crook, whatever it takes, sacrificed their personal lives, made sure they got us that education. And that's what literally drew the line between us and the rest of the people. And I'm actually glad to say today that the next generation, not our generation of people, because our generation of people didn't pay much attention, so everybody grew up with either no education or less education, and they have ended up become bus drivers, car drivers, and so on and so forth. But they all have realized how important education is. They all have realized why they should invest in their children's education. And that's exactly what they're doing. And every time I go to my village, I feel so excited to meet with these villagers and meet with the young children, right? Because that is the hope. The next generation, right? Once they get the education, that's what actually gets them out of this poverty and child labor. So what we are seeing is a very unfortunate scenario. It's a very unfortunate scenario. In fact, 2 days ago, we were with an MLA at Gurupura, Hunsur district. And this MLA spent almost 5-6 hours with us trying to explain to us why this is such a massive problem, which is basically why the buildings are in such bad shape, right? Across the state, I mean, you look at articles in all these magazines, and in fact, as we launched this thing, you know, there were many articles that have popped up in local newspapers and other things. Our friend Vadiraj Bhatt, he somehow his phone number got published in the newspaper, and since the time the articles got published this morning, he has received over 125 messages. 125 messages just in one day. People are begging for help to uplift their schools. And the fact of the matter is very simple. In fact, we experienced this in my own village. The school that I went to, which was constructed back in 50s, late 50s, early 60s, the life of these buildings typically lasts for about 40, 50 years, and then it starts to break down, or it starts to fall apart. And I was like perturbed. Why doesn't the government spend the resources? Because they're paying for teachers, they're paying for midday meals, right? Every activity is going on, but the school building is collapsing. How do you expect children to go into these schools when the building doesn't even exist, or the building is in such a bad shape? So I was stunned to learn 2 days ago from this MLA that he was talking about how in the state budget, about 18% of the budget is allocated for education. And of that 18%, majority of this money goes towards either salaries for all the teachers and all the other employees, and the remaining goes towards the midday meal, and there's a small portion that is left which he said is good enough to actually repair the schools. Now, explain to me, when the school is falling apart, how can you repair? You just cannot. And that's exactly the situation that we are facing, and that's exactly the reason why OSAAT is born, to address these issues. So, in our model, typically what we do, we either build an entire school, or we build many classrooms, or we build other facilities that is required in these schools. And obviously, we cannot do this all by ourselves. We need the help of many other nonprofit organizations, partners, and so on and so forth, because we have this ambition to reach states outside of just Karnataka. And if we have to expand beyond Karnataka, we just cannot work all by ourselves, because most of our volunteers today are all centered here. And since the equilibrium, the center of gravity is here, it's much easier for us to attract the volunteers and all. But that's not going to help solve the entire country's needs. So that's why we are now partnering with some amazing people whom you will see on the panel. And we also want to make sure that the local schools and the local villages also have a skin in the game when they're working with us. Because without that, they will think, oh, there is this OSAAT guys, they have money, in the bank, or they have this money tree behind their house, money is falling, so they'll just give the money. We don't want that kind of a thing to happen. We want people to have skin in the game. So we want the support of the local people to also participate. So if you look at this map, obviously all the red are in Karnataka. Right? These are all the schools. So we have done about 21 schools across the nation so far. 21 schools. Right? And in fact, when I was talking to G.K. Bhatt yesterday, he said it very nicely. So, someone asked this question, one school at a time. So you just do one school at any given point of time. In fact, that was the intention. Because we never thought that this actually is going to grow that significantly. So today, it has become multi-schools at a time. That's good. So in fact, right now, some 3 or 4 schools are being handled in parallel. So the red is all in Karnataka, and the non-red is outside of Karnataka. So as you can see, the center of gravity today is based in Bangalore. And we just did a school in Uttar Pradesh, which is in a small village called Gyani, which is about 10 kilometers from this town called Bareilly. And I know most of us are actually familiar with Rai Bareilly, not Bareilly, right? So this is not Rai Bareilly. This is actually Bareilly in Uttar Pradesh. And this Bareilly is about midway between Delhi and Lucknow. And this is Gyani is about 10 kilometers from that. And we worked with an exceptional partner, Mr. Arun Nagpal of Mruda Group, whom you will hear a little later. So he was able to, first of all, he's the one who introduced that school to us, and then he did a lot of heavy weightlifting while our volunteers visited the school and applied the processes and the methodologies that OSAAT has developed. So this is an example of that school that I just talked about, Gayatri Devi Junior High School, Gyani Village, Bareilly, UP. I mean, this is kind of unheard of, basically, because for somebody who's sitting here in Bangalore, going to Uttar Pradesh in the middle of nowhere, right? A lot of people ask me, why UP? How did you go there? So that itself was a miracle, and someday I will share that story. So this is the school that was constructed, and we just inaugurated this on the 23rd of this month. And as you can see the design, given the temperatures, the environment in that town, the architects wanted to keep the earthly kind of an outlook. So that's how the whole school is designed. It's absolutely beautiful, the way it has come out. 6 classrooms have been built. This is the Gurupura school. This is the one that we launched on the 26th in Hunsur district, about 5-6 kilometers from Hunsur. So we just did this same, very bad shape. Schools were really falling apart. The buildings were falling apart. And then they called us. And in fact, this actually, not this one, Amrutpura, is a case where the newspaper reported about how bad the conditions of a school was. And OSAAT team read that article, and then they responded for the help that the school was actually looking for. And that's the Amrutpura. That's another case study. So, at the end of the day, who are we and what have we done? So, OSAAT basically started in the US by NRIs back in 2003, as Anjan was describing. Vadiraj Bhatt, who was one of the very original idea creator and founder, who saw this in his own village. And we had solved this problem in our Baglur village because we had gone and constructed the Baglur schools, the school that I went and my brother attended, and the school that he saw in his village, Bajagodi. So that is when we came up with this whole concept and said, hey, let's go raise the money. And the team is exceptionally talented, not just from a volunteer perspective. The team is outstandingly talented from a music perspective. So the thought process was, let's do some music programs and use that to raise the money. So we created a band called Raga. And this Raga, in fact, I happen to be a singer too for that. If you stay back after this program, you will hear many of the fantastic singers. And a good thing for Wadi, most of these guys have relocated back from US to here. So they're trying to create a parallel Raga in India. And this Raga was one of the initial drivers to raise the money. And it was fascinating to see how people came forward to donate. Outside of just buying the tickets for the show, they even sponsored, they even wrote big checks. And that's how the first school was done. This is Bajagodi school. So that's how the whole thing started. And we provide basically the infrastructure for underprivileged schools. And one of the things that I take a lot of pride, and the entire volunteers take a lot of pride, is this is a zero overhead, right? And complete transparency. When I say zero overhead, this actually stretches even further. I've never seen, I work with multiple nonprofit organizations. This is an organization where when the volunteers visit for any destination sites, whether they fly, they go by bus, they go by train, they don't even bill back to the organization. They put that money from their own personal pocket. So that's why I said, when you talk about exceptional volunteerism, this is what it is, right? It's hard to find such kind of people. So what we have done so far, completed about 21 schools across India, and we have actually raised more money, but we have spent over $500,000, which is equivalent to 3.5 to 4 crores, depending on what the rupee-dollar conversion is. But the fact of the matter is, if you take all the students that are using and benefiting the classrooms in these 21 schools, that's almost 4,000 to 5,000 students are benefiting today as we speak. So we continuously raise money in the US, and now because there are so many volunteers and so many amazing people in India, we have started to raise money, and a lot of donors are in India who are contributing to the OSAAT cause. And then fantastic repeatable process has been developed. Each time we learn new things, and you put that as part of the process, so that if somebody takes it, they will be able to replicate the same process and build more number of schools. And obviously, as I said, right, in order for us to scale, we got to work closely with many NGOs and donors. So the only reason why all of us are here is to make a difference. That's the only reason. Make a difference in others' lives. Because, we can all be self-centric, we can all make a lot of money, make more money, buy amazing cars, build amazing houses, we can do all that stuff. But I can tell you, the joy that all of us get by doing this, by visiting people. That's what I tell many others. What OSAAT gives you is, number one, you get to work with incredible volunteers. Number two, you get to meet people that you would never have met. You'd never have met in your life, right? And number three, you would never have gone and visited the kind of places that we get to visit. Never. I mean, could I have visited Gyani? Could I have visited Ravalagundewadi near Bijapur? Could I have visited Gurupura? No way. Why did I do that? Thanks to OSAAT, right? So that's the only difference that I see, and then the objective of all of the volunteers. So we have lofty goals. From 21, we want to scale this to about 100 schools by 2025. I mean, that obviously requires a lot of volunteers, a lot of donors, a lot of partners, right? All of these things we need to scale. I mean, those of you who know how a typical company is built, you will see the revenue growth, what is called as the hockey stick growth. So what we have done is crossing the chasm, right, of building the initial 20 schools and understanding a lot of these processes, understanding a lot of these methodologies, and now we believe we are in the right place to partner with the right kind of NGOs or partners, and also with fantastic support from people like you to raise the money that is needed. So some of the thought process that we are adapting is, why not create cluster of schools in a same taluk or same district? For example, when we were in this Gurupura a couple days ago, right, we met this MLA, and there are so many schools within 5, 6, 10, 20 kilometers, right? And they're all now coming forward. They know more about OSAAT, and OSAAT knows more about those people. So why not create cluster of schools, right, in these areas? And process is serving as a role model so that we could actually work with other NGOs, right, who can help us. And lastly, seeking the government help. I mean, this is where we need help from those of you who have good connections into the government as to how do we get whatever money that government has towards construction of these schools, how do we tap that money? Because the government allocation of money is typically 2 to 3x of what we need in order to build the same number of classrooms, right? Because of whatever reason, inefficiency and so on and so forth. And we need to tap the government money in order for us to scale. So let's quickly watch a video. And you guys want to turn off the lights?
ಒಂದು ಕ್ಲಾಸ್ ಮಾತ್ರ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ನಡೀತಾರೆ ಸರ್. ಊರಲ್ಲೆಲ್ಲ 3 ಕ್ಲಾಸು ಇಲ್ಲ ಮರದ ಕೆಳಗೆ.
ಶೌಚಾಲಯ ಇಲ್ಲ, ನೀರಿನ ವ್ಯವಸ್ಥೆ ಇಲ್ಲ, ಯಾವುದೊಂದು ಏನು ಸರಿ ಇಲ್ಲ ಸರ್.
ಹಿಂದುಳಿದ ವರ್ಗ ಬಲ ಜನಾಂಗಕ್ಕೆ ಸೇರಿದಂಥವ್ರು ಪೂರ್ತಿ ಅಂತಂತ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಈ ಶಾಲೆ ಬಿಟ್ಟರೆ ಮತ್ತೆ ಓದುವುದಕ್ಕೆ ಯಾವುದೇ ಒಂಥರ ಅನುಕೂಲತೆ ಇಲ್ಲ.
ಈ ರೂಮ್ಸ್ ಇಲ್ಲದೆ ಇರೋದ್ರಿಂದ ಕಲಿಕೆ ಸಹ ಹಿಂದುಂಟಾಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ. ನಮಗೆ ಬಹಳ ಬೇಜಾರಾಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ
ಸರ್. 2010, 11, 12ನೇ ಸಾಲಿನ ಸರ್ ಸ್ವಂತ ಖರ್ಚಿಂದ ಸರ್ ಸುಮಾರು 3,500 ರೂಪಾಯಿ ಖರ್ಚು ಮಾಡಿ ಸರ್ ಅವ್ರ ಮಕ್ಕಳಿಂದ ದುಡ್ಡು ಎತ್ಕೊಂಡು ಸರ್ ಸಾಲ್ಟೇಜ್ ಮಾಡೋಕ್ಕೆ ಸರ್ ಸ್ವಂತ ಯೂನಿಫಾರ್ಮ್ ಓದಿಸಿದ್ವಿ ಸರ್ ನಾವು. ಇನ್ನೂ 10 ರೂಪಾಯಿ.
It's a heartwarming moment to be here and to be partnering with OSAAT for this really noble mission.
ಅದೇನು ಮಾಡಿದ್ದೀರಿ ನೀವು?
ಹಸಿರು ಕಟ್ಟಿ ಕೂಡ
ತುಂಬ ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿ.
ಇದನ್ನು ನೋಡುವ ಜವಾಬ್ದಾರಿ ನಿಂದು.
Amazing progress on this project. I think but it's also done very well.
Right.
Just very excited to see how it's going to really benefit the community. So
we are proud to partner with OSAAT, organization that is doing tremendous work in making meaningful impact in lives of these children.
Education can change someone's life and is a cause that is very close to most of our hearts.
It is an amazing journey, which all started with a group of NRIs who were working in US, who were also part-time amateur artists and enthusiastic volunteers who wanted to do something good back to their country. And they were all searching for a great cause. And then we came across a school which badly needed an infrastructure. And then an idea sparkled in our mind, thinking, why not this as our main cause to contribute? Because at the end of the day, without an infrastructure, there is no school. And this idea snowballed, and then we started to raise money, and then a lot of people started to join hands, including engineers, architects, retirees, philanthropists, and then it became such big that we could do almost 20 schools in this journey, and we are very excited that we are ready to take on 100 schools.
At OSAAT, we strongly believe that providing education to every kid potentially can uplift future generations. We have seen that without proper school infrastructure, children either drop off from schools or do not attend. That's why we very strongly believe that it's every one of our responsibility to provide a fair opportunity to every deserving kid to get that education so that future generations can get better.